Jaya Radha Gopinath Radha Gopinath Radhe. Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe. O Jaya Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe Radhe Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe Radhe. O Radhe 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 Radhe. Om Adinat Mirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Pravajantam Anapetyam Apeti Krityam Dvaipayano Viraha Katara Ajubhava Putreti Tam Mayatayo Taravo Vinidustam Sarvabhutam Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayatudiraye Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshay Shiptascha Karmadita Ranga Mahadye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapana Vrinde Namaste Charana Ravindam Bhajami Radham Aravinda Netram Smarami Radham Madhurashmitrasyam Vadami Radham Karuna Baradram Tato Mamanasti Katyana Chapi. I first of all offer my profound Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of our beloved Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again millions of times unto the lotus feet of our beloved Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, Dandavat pranams. So I have a whole lot of very beautiful lectures here about opulence and Aishwarya. If you want to copy them, you're welcome to do so, and to see if anyone else wants them. There's about 4 or 5 there that really, I think, very valuable on that topic from last night. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, we've been yesterday discussing the most wonderful Chatur Shloki, and we understood that the first 2 verses of that are describing the nature of Krishna. Aham eva sam eva gre, that before there was anything, there was only Krishna. It's describing a whole background for us. And then that 3rd beautiful verse, the rahasya, the confidential secret of how to access that sublime personality, and that is by devotional service. And it seems very simple just to say devotional service, but this is a very secret thing, actually. Not many people in the world actually want to perform pure devotional service. So this is our aim and object completely, how to perform pure devotional service. That's explained in the 4th verse, the Abhideya of that Chaturshloki. So these 4 verses, like a garland, and I hope that I've given you some inspiration to take a deeper study on these 4 verses. Actually, there's a very beautiful book by Srila Bhaktivedanta called Krishna Samhita. And in there, all of the chapters specifically describe these 4 verses. Krishna Samhita. He has it in town here. It's a very small book, but it's the one I advised for you to look at for the introduction. But the rest of that volume is all describing these 4 verses. That's all. And he takes them out beautifully and fluffs them right open. So if we have that core understanding of those verses, then the entire meaning and the focus of the Bhagavatam is always very strong in our hearts, if we have that. So now we've discussed, to some degree, Sargo, the creation of the Lord. And we've discussed also, to some degree, Vishargo. Vishargo is the manifestation of the people, etc., and the planetary systems in this material world, performed by Lord Brahma. So that's like the secondary creation. So we've discussed that to some degree. Now we come to the 3rd stage, which is called Sthanam. Sthanam, this means that everything is resting on Krishna or Vishnu. And this is specifically described in the 5th canto in relationship to all the different planetary systems and their various inhabitants. So we've come from the greater creation to the sub-creation, and now it's in a sense coming to a more focused or localized aspect of the creation. How did all the heavenly planets manifest, and what actually goes on the heavenly planets? So in this wonderful literature, it's describing every single aspect of our existence in this world, from top to bottom. So these topics in the 5th canto, they're not often discussed separately, but they're very wonderful just to hear and have an idea of the depth of the descriptions contained within the Bhagavatam. Every single aspect of the universe is contained within the Bhagavatam. It's like, the entire ocean in one jar is here in the Bhagavatam. So my purpose in discussing or reading through some of these aspects about Jambudvip, about the movements of the sun, about the different personalities residing on those planets, is simply to give us some inspiration to drink this beverage of Srimad Bhagavatam more deeply, to see its total, what it contains totally. So there's a beautiful description here. I'm going to read some of the introduction to it. This follows after a chapter by Priyavrata. Priyavrata is also described in this 5th canto, and Priyavrata was the brother of Uttanapad, and he was the son of Swayambhuva Manu. He was performing great austerities, taking on that brahmachari ashram, and when his brother Uttanapad, the father of Dhruva Maharaj, went to the forest to focus fully on the Supreme Lord, then Priyavrata, he was requested by Narad, his guru, and his father, Swayambhuva Manu, and also Lord Brahma, to break his brahmachari vow and take the reins of the universe, to control the universe. So on the order of those 3 mighty personalities, he was of course submissive to that, and he ruled this universe for an extraordinary length of time. And he also took a wife and had so many children, etc. But one of the pastimes that he performed, he was an amazing personality. he decided that the sun wasn't sufficient because there was a time of darkness for the other half of the planet. So he decided to create another sun. And he took this other sun in opposition, in a sense, like when the sun we have now is blazing, then the other sun would come on the other side of the universe, so that there would be these two suns simultaneously. So this is an extraordinary feat by such a greatly powerful personality. But this is what is described here.
But it happened. He succeeded to have another sun.
Completely. Totally. Fully. There's even a photograph of it.
Chapter 5.
Yeah, someone had a camera up there. They were putting it on. There it is. That's his sun chariot taking the sun around. So while he was performing that feat, the rims of the chariot formed the 7 principal oceans of this whole planetary system. And those oceans are the salt ocean, then there's a freshwater ocean, then there's a milk ocean, then there's an ocean of honey, there's an ocean of sugarcane juice, there's an ocean of ghee, etc. So these specific oceans were formed, dividing the different planetary systems. So this is quite technical. Haladar Prabhu is trying to get a grasp of it right now. Many sort of scientifically minded persons have tried to draw what the universe actually looks like, because it doesn't look anything like what our mundane scientists present to us. There's actually one central pivot of one mountain, and there's all these flat varshas, they're called, levels of ground. And we're going to read about the way the sun has its rotation today. And of course, it's nothing like we have a picture of. We have only mundane vision. We are possessed of those 4 defects, that vipralipsa, brahm, pramad, and karanapatava. We have imperfect senses, we cheat, we lie, and we're illusioned about our identity. So these imperfect senses can never perceive the perfection of this universe. So part of the teaching of the Bhagavatam, or part of the information, or part of the gift of the Bhagavatam, is to describe all of these aspects. They will seem completely beyond what we could consider normal. We like a massive 80,000 mile high tree with enormous mangoes on it, crashing to the ground, creating rivers where people would live on the banks of those rivers. This is what I'm going to describe today. So don't even try and put it in any sort of, look for some archaeological, proof of this, because I don't think you'll see it unless you have extraordinary vision. If you have vision gifted by Shivji and Gurudev, etc., some sort of mystic ability, then perhaps you may see a semblance of this if you so desire. But it is the reality. It's as much extraordinary, actually, as to conceive of that Krishna is within every atom of existence. Krishna really is in every single atom of existence. And these descriptions here, you see, when we come to this 5th canto, we're supposed to, a wise person will have read through the other 4 cantos, and his faith will have become very strong in the authority of this scripture. So when he comes to having his mind blown completely by these descriptions, he can somehow or other take it on board and accept it by this quality of achintya bhav that we've described so many times. How can we expect to know everything? That's called in the material world arrogance. Someone who thinks that they know everything. It's called arrogance, but actually there is so much information about this universe that we will never even vaguely appreciate, but some things we can hear. So let me just start from the beginning here. This will remind you totally of Jaiva Dharma. This is like the very first paragraph of Jaiva Dharma. So it's a good explanation for the setting of Jaiva Dharma. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is explaining it like this. So even in Jaiva Dharma, the very first words that he's uttering are actually coming from the Srimad Bhagavatam. In other words, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is showing the integral link between what he is presenting in Jivadhamma and the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's no difference. The truths that we read, for example, in Gita and Jivadhamma and the Bhagavatam, they may have a different terminology, but the essence, the essential nature, the bhakti sar, is exactly the same. So never become confused when the same truth is presented with a different set of, terminologies. It's practically the same truth that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I am a tiny servant, and my swarup, its nature, its dharma, is to render service to that Lord. That's it. That's the beginning and end of all the philosophy. So we can close the book and go home. But how can our material minds be able to sort of, accept that fully? Our material minds are so thick with dredge, from unlimited births in this world of conditioned life. And that all needs to be purified. So because we are so attached to our bodies and our situations, it needs a ton of sort of explanation to begin to sort of loosen that up and start to let go. So all of this is being presented just to achieve that end, to recognize our swarup, to recognize our dharma, our nature in service to Radha and Krishna. That's all. That's all. So we knew this the first day of coming to devotional service, but it takes all these years to actually begin to have some realization of these facts. But this is the heart of it, and that's all, as we said yesterday, explained in those 4 Chatushlokis. So now, Parikshit Maharaj is inquiring from Shukadev Goswami. This is from the first text of chapter 16, canto 5. So the translation is that King Parikshit said to Shukadev Goswami, "O Brahmana, you have already informed me that the radius of Bur Mandal extends as far as the sun spreads its light and heat, and as far as the moon and all the stars can be seen." So now this is taking us well beyond our conditioned understanding of this external world. And I want to read this purport by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In this verse, it is stated that the planetary system, known as Bur Mandal, extends to the limits of the sunshine. Beautiful way the descriptions are presented. The limits of the sunshine. According to modern science, the sunshine reaches Earth from a distance of 93 million miles. If we calculate, according to this modern information, 93 million miles can be considered the radius of Bur Mandal. It's completely extraordinary. I know one devotee in England, he's totally into numerology. For so many years, he chants Hare Krishna, etc., but everything he recognizes through numerology. And he has been completely amazed when he's read these descriptions of the distances, etc., because they are exactly relative to the distances that the material scientists have actually understood. And everything is in multiples. It's like radiating out. And all the figures, they just reproduce in multiples. There's a whole science, he explained to me one day, of all these distances, the numerological connection with them all. It's really, really phenomenal. They all link up totally. They link up originally with the 12 months of the year, etc., the different seasons of the year. It's all calculated. It's an incredible, precise balancing of distances, etc. Nothing slightly is whimsical. If we can calculate, according to this modern information, 93 million miles can be considered the radius of Bur Mandal. In the Gayatri mantra, we chant Om Bhur Bhuva Swa. The word Bhur refers to Bur Mandal. Tat Sarvito Varenyam, the sunshine spreads throughout Bur Mandal. Therefore the sun is worshipable. The stars, which are known as nakshatras, are not different suns as modern astronomers suppose. From Bhagavad Gita 10:21, we understand that the stars are similar to the moon. Like the moon, the stars reflect the sunshine. Apart from our modern distinguished estimations of where the planetary systems are located, we can understand that the sky and its various planets were studied long before Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled. Shukadeva Goswami explained the location of the planets, and this indicates that the information was known long before Shukadeva Goswami related it to Maharaj Parikshit. The location of the various planetary systems was not unknown to the sages who flourished in the Vedic age. So Prabhupada's putting us in perspective of where these astrological and astronomical descriptions, that they've been understood and known for millions of years. Now we go on with the translation. My dear Lord, the rolling wheels of Maharaj Priyavrata's chariot created 7 ditches in which the 7 oceans came into existence. Because of these 7 oceans, Burmandal is divided into 7 islands. It's called Varshas. It's like flat pieces of landmass. You have given a very general description of their measurement, names and characteristics. Now I wish to know them in detail. Kindly fulfill my desire. So this inquiry is incredibly elevated. And then, as we are hearing these descriptions, Maharaj Parikshit is letting us know that he hasn't for a single moment minimized the goal of this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is to connect with the Supreme Lord. We're not like off on an astronomical tangent here. It's all under the one heading called Sthanam, which means to show us that everything in existence is resting on the energy of the Lord, scientifically. So like you said, for example, to pacify those who want to see some archaeological proof in the world, this is presented to also show those who are really concerned with science, they can, because we have very elevated scientific devotees for many years. One devotee, he's left his body now, Sataputta Prabhu. He wrote so many books that were welcomed by the scientific group of people in the world. And he's also defined all of these Vedic views of the universe and presented them very beautifully. So he's already done that to present to the material scientist, because this is a science, what we're talking about. It's the science of the soul, and it can be verified through these scientific presentations. So Maharaj Parikshit is continuing, but when the mind is fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his external feature, made of the material modes of nature, the gross universal form, it is brought to the platform of pure goodness. In that transcendental position, one can understand the Supreme Lord Vasudeva, who in his subtler form is self-effulgent and beyond the modes of nature. O my Lord, please describe vividly how that form, which covers the entire universe, is perceived. And then Shukadeva Goswami begins his description here. Now, Sukadeva Goswami is speaking. The planetary system known as Burmandal resembles a lotus flower, and its 7 islands resemble the whorl of that flower. The length and breadth of the island known as Jambudvip, which is situated in the middle of that whorl, is 1 million yojans. A yojan is 8 miles, so it's 80 million miles. Jambudvip is round like the leaf of a lotus flower. So this description of Jambudvip is described in the very first paragraph of Jivadhamma. So I'm reading these descriptions just to give us an understanding of what is in the 5th canto. So it's not going to sit on the shelf for, years and years, and we're never going to actually touch it. These are the information. This is the information that is given there. In Jambudvip, there are 9 divisions of land, each with a length of 9,000 yojans, which is 72,000 miles. There are 8 mountains that mark the boundaries of these divisions and separate them nicely. So every aspect is actually going to be presented here, so that this truth that is said in the second verse of the whole Bhagavatam, that this is not a cheating presentation, that the entire universal description can be explained. And then it goes on describing the different mountain peaks, etc. It describes the 4 different directions and the 4 different mountains that mark the 4 principal directions. It's very interesting to just hear this. I'll just read you one translation. The other are quite similar. In the same way, west and east of Ilvrata-Varsh. Ilvrata-Varsh is one of the names of the flat pieces of land, are 2 great mountains, known the Mailavan and the Gandhamana, respectively. These 2 mountains, which are 2,000 yojans, 16,000 miles high, extend as far as Nila Mountain in the north and Nishada in the south. So just to hear of the immensity of these mountains, the height of them is phenomenal. So it gives us some kind of impression of our tininess. How small am I? What do we have in this world? We have the Himalaya. How high is the Himalaya? 8, 10 miles high. You know, we're talking here 16,000 miles high. And this is only one of the small mountains. When it gets later on, they're even bigger. So these mountains are being described. And I think that by appreciating these truths, this essential ingredient of insignificance can manifest more easily in the heart of the sadhak when he's hearing these. It's describing the width of the trees. Oh, hang on a second. Oh. Standing like flagstaffs on the summits of these 4 mountains are a mango tree, a rose apple tree, a kadamba tree, and a banyan tree. Actually, there was one devotee who used to travel with Srila Prabhupada, and he was Pradumna, I think his name was. He was the Sanskrit editor. And when he heard that we had actually never been to the moon, that it wasn't possible, because when you study these Vedic texts, you realize that you cannot go to that heavenly planet of the moon. When he realized that Prabhupada was saying that, he became so disturbed, he left. He couldn't... Tell me. Oh. Oh, thank you for that. I always misunderstood that. Okay, so sometimes the devotees are really challenged on these topics, even to the degree of actually giving up the whole thing, saying, well, that can't exist. How can this mango tree? And these trees are calculated to have a width of 800 miles. So 800 miles. How far is it to Delhi? It's about 400 miles, isn't it? So, no? 90 miles, sorry, 90 miles. So what, 4 times to Delhi and back is just the width of one of these trees. You know, that's, Sorry? Yeah, it's going to describe them all, don't worry. And it's going to even describe the residents who live on the banks of those rivers that get formed by when the fruits crash.
Is that on the Earth planet?
Huh?
Is this on the Earth planet?
No, of course not. This is in the higher planets. This is in the higher planetary system. And the height of the tree is 8,800 miles, which is 111 yojans. Their branches, even the branches are described, that they spread a radius of 8,000 miles, the branches. Now he's describing that between these lakes, between these mountains, there are 4 huge lakes. The water of the first tastes just like milk, the water of the second like honey, and that of the third like sugarcane juice. The 4th lake is filled with pure water. So these lakes are between these huge mountains where these huge trees exist. The celestial beings such as the Siddhas, Charanas and Gandharvas, who are also known as demigods, enjoy the facilities of those four legs. Consequently, they have natural perfections of mystic yoga, such as the power to become smaller than the smallest or greater than the greatest. Understand the dynamic of the higher planetary systems, the heavenly planets. They have such an abundance of enjoyment. They have so much mystic siddhi. They have subtle bodies. They have so much material opulence, it would seem. And yet they don't remember Krishna. So it's called that land of bhoga, that land of enjoyment. And they don't remember Krishna. Hardly. We see the king of the Devas, Indra. How many times, even Krishna one time comes just to ask for a flower. One flower he was asking from King Indra, from the Parijat flower, to give again to Satyabhama. Indra wouldn't even give it. So Krishna demonstrated his might and took the whole tree. Well, if you're not even getting me a flower, I'll take the whole tree. So Indra, we see in many instances, he becomes, and he's the king of the demigods. So what to speak of all the other demigods? They forget regularly. They have to be reminded. And then as soon as they get reminded, then they forget again, because there's overwhelming opportunity to enjoy the material senses is so extreme. So never want or long for a lot of money or material facility, because it certainly will distract us from our focus of surrendering to Krishna. There are also 4 celestial gardens named Nandana, Chitrata, Vaibrajaka, and Sarvata Bhadra. So these 4 gardens are described. The best of the demigods, along with their wives, who are like ornaments of heavenly beauty, meet together and enjoy within those gardens, while their glories are sung by lesser demigods known as Gandharvas. On the lower slope of the Mandara mountain is a mango tree named Devachuta. It is 8,800 miles high. Mangoes as big as mountain peaks and as sweet as nectar fall from the top of this tree for the enjoyment of the denizens of heaven. Prabhupada is giving even another quote that in the Vayu Purana it's mentioned about this same mango tree. When all those solid fruits fall from such a height, they break, and the sweet, fragrant juice within them flows out and becomes increasingly more fragrant when it mixes with other scents. That juice cascades from the mountain in waterfalls and becomes a river called Arunoda, which flows pleasantly through the eastern side of Ilvrata. So, we can't begin to try and calculate it. We just have to accept it. This helps us open this Achintya Bhav. It's a reality, as much of a reality as Sri Krishna is. The pious wives of the Yakshas set as personal maidservants to assist Bhavani, the wife of Lord Shiva. Because they drink the water of the river Arunoda, their bodies become fragrant, and as the air carries away that fragrance, it perfumes the entire atmosphere for 80 miles around. So that's a description of the persons who drink that. I have a question here that I am trying to look for the answer, that how are the yakshas right up there when we discuss the yakshas as being the lower people. I thought you would ask this. And when I was reading this yesterday, I was thinking, oh my God, she's going to ask me that question. I don't know the answer. So, but I will ask about the description of these people that live there, these yakshas, because the yakshas are of a lower mentality, the yakshas and the rakshasas. Similarly, the fruits of the jambu tree, which are full of pulp and have very small seeds, fall from a great height and break to pieces. So these 4 trees, there's a kadamba tree, a mango tree, a jambu tree. Who remembers what the other one was? Banyan tree. Very good. Their fruits are the size of elephants, and the juice gliding from them becomes a river named Jambu Nadi. This river falls a distance of 10,000 yojans, so that's 100,000 miles. It falls a distance from the summit of Mount Meru Mandara. to the southern side of Ilvrata and floods the entire land of Ilvrata with juice. I'll just read what Prabhupada is saying. We can only imagine, this is the purport, how much juice there might be in a fruit that is the size of an elephant but has a very tiny seed. Naturally, the juice from the broken jamba fruits forms waterfalls and floods the entire land of Ilvrata. That juice produces an immense quantity of gold, as will be explained in the next verses. So now the translation here. The mud on both banks of the river Jambu Nadi, being moistened by the flowing juice and then dried by the air and the sunshine, produces huge quantities of gold called Jambu Nad. The denizens of heaven use this gold for various kinds of ornaments. Therefore all the inhabitants of the heavenly planets and their youthful wives are fully decorated with golden helmets, bangles, belts, and thus enjoy their life. So Prabhupada writes here in the purport something very interesting. Understand, Prabhupada, he called his purports his ecstasies. These are his transcendental ecstasies that he's sharing with us. He's explaining so many aspects of this divine scripture so that we can absorb it very simply. So let me just read this commentary so that we can hear how Prabhupada is commenting on this phenomenal description of this river of Jambu, which produces this gold. So purport, by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the rivers on some planets produce gold on their banks. The poor inhabitants of this earth, because of their incomplete knowledge, are captivated by a so-called Bhagavan who can produce a small quantity of gold. He's referring to that Sai Baba who used to pretend just to produce a little bit of gold in his hand and everybody would worship him. Oh, this must be God. And here is a whole river that is producing gold. You know, what a vast difference, this little person on this planet. So again, it's helping us to purify our misconception of our own greatness. This can take years to actually do, to work on, depending. However, it is understood that in the higher planetary system, in this material world, the mud on the banks of the Jambu Nadi mixes with jambu juice and reacts with the sunshine in the air and automatically produces huge quantities of gold. Thus the men and women are decorated there with various golden ornaments and they look very nice. Unfortunately, on earth, there is such a scarcity of gold that the governments of the world try to keep it in reserve and issue paper money. Because that currency is not backed up by gold, the paper they distribute as money is worthless. But nevertheless, the people on earth are very proud of material advancement. So Prabhupada, he cuts regularly at this misconception of material opulence. Before we became devotees, we might have been somewhat enamored, thinking that there is so much material wealth somewhere on the planet. I think sometimes in the villages of India, sometimes the young men, they come and they actually think the Western world, you know, it's so great, it has so much opulence and so on. It's nothing. We should read these descriptions regularly. If some Indian from a village becomes enamored by seeing all the technology and so on, we'll understand later through these descriptions where the technology comes from. It all comes from the lower regions. In the lower regions where they don't even have the sun, technology is so much more superior to here because they worship it as God. It's like if you ever go to Japan, it's like the last place where the sun comes. Like those residents of Japan and China, actually they're just coming from the lower regions. That's why their eyes are a little squinting at the sun. They have eyes like that. Anyway, that's described. But if you see in Japan, their complete fixed focus on technology, where do most of these computers originate? Where does all this technology come from? It sort of starts in Japan because it's linked to the lower worlds, because it's coming through from the lower planetary systems where they don't have a sun. They just have the jewels of the Nagas there to illuminate the place. So they've worshipped technology a lot longer than here. And that's like their God. They don't have any sort of spiritual understanding whatsoever. They're totally void of any spiritual connection. That's why they're the lower planets. But they have this technology. So now in Kali Yuga, we are almost worshipping this same technology as if it's something very much to be, revered and honored. And it's totally, nothing. It has no value whatsoever because it's not about Krishna.
Yeah, actually, this technology has been coming from lower planetary systems via the inhabitants from there who are masters of very advanced technology, flying saucers, etc. And they have come here and have done a deal with various governments on the planet and giving some of the technology in exchange for the freedom to do whatever they want to do here.
Yeah. So money is the object, money is the goal. We think that by material...
Money and power, actually, at the end
yeah,
of the day.
but we think that by... Yeah, money, power. It's the antithesis of a godly person or a saintly person. These so-called UFOs and so on, they're all coming from the lower regions. They're all built in some material technology. If someone comes from a higher region, like the Nava-Yogendras or Narada Muni, they can just pass through the airways on the sun rays. They don't need all this garbage of UFOs and so on. When the devotees sometimes they get all excited about UFOs, just close the door on it. It's only from the lower regions. If something has a material form, then it's coming from the lower place. The higher planets are more subtle. They have subtle forms of transport.
In regards to that, Prabhupada said that in previous yugas, denizens from the higher planets would come here. Like he explained a specific example of the Greek gods, that they actually existed and they would come in previous ages when things were more septic. But nowadays, they don't even come here to urinate.
Yeah. There's many, many descriptions when the Devas visit the earth in Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, like Prithu Maharaj, the 4 Kumaras, they come in his yagya and they bless Prithu Maharaj with their darshan and so many words of wisdom. There are so many descriptions of the Devas coming to this planet. But now, because of Kali Yuga, the place has become so polluted that the Devas, they don't even come here. But in this Kali Yuga, even something greater comes. That's the Mahamantra. The Mahamantra is flowing from that highest spiritual world, and with that, satisfying the heart of the sadhak in all his desires. He doesn't want anything else. He doesn't want to become excited about going to the heavenly planets or the lower planets or speculating on this or speculating on that. He's so absorbed internally with developing his loving relationship with Radha and Krishna. He's intoxicated with joy. So this is there in this age, but only empowered in this Kali Yuga, not previous Kali Yugas.
So, just to clarify, is there certain types of technology that are good and certain types that are bad?
No. Technology is he's asking, there are certain types of technology that are good, there are certain types of technology that are bad. I would say that all technology is bad, but you can use it for something good. I'm using this for speaking the Bhagavatam. Therefore, it has a positive purpose. But the way that it came about to actually mine the Mother Earth of the different minerals to make this, it's in such an aggressive way that any of this technology, it's described in the Bhagavatam, in the 2nd canto, the pastime of Hiranyaksha. I don't know whether we mentioned Hiranyaksha at all. Did we talk about Varaha? It's amazing. I had so many topics that I was going to talk to you that I've been talking to myself in my room about, and I can't remember if I've actually talked to you about them or not. Anyway, I went through the whole Hiranyaksha pastime in my mind just a couple of days, and Varaha, saving the earth. But there it's described in the Bhagavatam that Hiranyaksha mined all of the gold out of the planet. Hiranya, that means gold. He mined it all out of the planet. Therefore, the planet lost its ability to balance itself in space and sunk into the Garbhodak ocean. That's why it sank into the ocean. And Prabhupada comments in his purport there, just like today, the materialists are mining this oil out of the planet to such a degree, that we don't know how much it's affecting the balance of the earth. Because of that oil is in the planet for a specific purpose, just like gold and silver and the other minerals are there. Take away man for a minute and just look at that planet and what's within it. It's there to form its delicate balance in the space that it occupies. And if you start taking out more than, is necessary, if you overtaking it out, then it's going to create some sort of imbalance, just like when Hiranyaksha took all the gold out and the planet sank into the Garbhodak Ocean. So simultaneously, we can't of course do anything unless Krishna sanctions it. But he will allow us through our greed, excessive greed, to, exploit the minerals of this world to a certain degree. But we should understand from the pages of Bhagavatam, I'm not talking about these as topics. I'm trying to show to everybody how the Bhagavatam explains all of these phenomena. Everything in existence has an explanation and an answer from here. In any topic, all the topics are discussed here. For example, it's very prominent in the world today, this imbalance, because the climatic changes are so radical at the moment. So there's so much speculation. I know particularly the devotees in the Western world, they get so engrossed in these topics, but they forget the prayojan. They think about all these little things, and because they're kind of like exciting and sensational. I know many devotees, they spend their whole days and times just immersed in, this speculative sort of idea. If they just read the Bhagavatam and see how Prabhupada reconciles all of these things beautifully, then they can just accept what is happening more easily and peacefully. Huh?
Which canto is that about the weather change, climate change? Which canto? This?
It's many references in the 5th canto, also in the 2nd canto. He's not referring directly to the climate change like that, but he's talking about the imbalance in the world. And the imbalance, if it's imbalancing, then a season that was only, at a certain degree will become, more prominent in another area.
So it's all negative, but it's okay to use it for good things. I mean, some clarification.
We have to use this technology. Right? We can't live in the world.
Internet and
yes,
cameras.
Yes, we use.
Airplanes. And
it's called yukta vairagya. We use money. If you give me $1 million, it's not a bad thing. I'll go and make another 2 Gopinath Bhavan somewhere or something. Or print, 1 million Srimad Bhagavatams just to give to people. Yes, we'll use all of it. The devotee is not sentimental at all. He'll take any object and utilize it in Krishna's glory. Even we take milk products and we offer them to Krishna in the hope that it'll purify the slaughterhouse industry somehow. But that's a whole other topic. But yes, of course we use technology. I have my Kindle, my cell phone, this, that. I'm going to go on a plane in a few days' time. I'm using it all. There's nothing that I'm up with the latest, what's the latest? I can't think. The latest Kindle or whatever,
There is one religion that doesn't use even electricity, one religious group.
There are many, Krishna Kamini, there are many.
Where?
There are,
In India?
you know this?
In England.
And they're also in India, this Shirdi Sai Baba, who Gurudev respected, not the Afro one, but the older one. And he has a place in Orissa, and some people went there, they told me about it. You leave your cell phone at one desk, and then the whole complex, huge complex, it borders on a forest. It's everything there is completely just natural. And they have very peaceful arrangements for everything, as they lived like 300 or 400 years ago. Cows are wandering everywhere, milk products are there, vegetable gardens and so on. It's completely, the whole consciousness, without these technological things, they create some tension on the nervous system. All the cars and traffic, etc. in the world today, they have their toll on our nervous systems. They help create this fanatical sort of passionate mentality that's in the minds of most people and creates such a distance from anything peaceful at all. It creates such aggravation. But you can't falsely run away to a mountaintop and then imagine it doesn't exist. It does exist. So just use it for Krishna's service. And then Krishna will bless us with not so much tension created by that. He can do anything. Because the currency is not backed up by gold, the paper they distribute as money is worthless. But nevertheless, the people on earth are very proud of their material advancement. In modern times, girls and ladies have ornaments made of plastic instead of gold, and plastic utensils are used instead of gold ones. Yet people are very proud of their material wealth. You see the lady walking in the street, she's got a whole string of bangles, very proud, look, my bangles, all plastic. Prabhupada is trying to purify this root, trait that is obstructing us from accessing that supreme, which is our pride. Anyway, I won't go on. Therefore, the people of this age are described as Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhargya Uparudita. In other words, they are extremely bad and slow to understand the opulence of the Supreme Lord. They have been described as Sumanda Matayo because their conceptions are so crippled that they accept a bluffer who produces a little gold to be God. Prabhupada sometimes gets really angry. You can see him writing this, the pen cracking underneath his, Because in India, this Sai Baba, who has been shown up as such a charlatan, what he produces a little gold, how does he do it? It's a magical trick. And yet $165 or 65? $65 million behind it. Yeah. So many people are looking for, because they want the same. They want that themselves. They are envious people.
Celebrities, cricketers.
Yeah. Any taxi you take in Delhi, it's got the little Sai Baba icon on it, his influence. All of that stuff is there, yeah. Yeah, so much of it. But he's a complete charlatan. But we see the nature of the world by this. And the devotee sees how special are devotees. It's a very special thing to actually come to this process. And it's even more special to be able to stay, to go the mileage for the rest of our lives. We need this Bhagavatam as a treasure in our hearts, explaining all of these topics. Not just the spiritual goal, etc., but the world we live in. This is why I'm describing this. It opens a window to describing the whole external aspect of this universe and these enormous trees, etc. Because they have no gold in their possession, they are actually poverty-stricken, and therefore they are considered unfortunate. So this is our condition in the world. Sometimes these unfortunate people want to be promised to the heavenly planets to achieve fortunate positions. So you see, if you go in any Indian city, etc., they're all worshipping, Durga Ma, Ganeshji, Suryadev. So many different demigods are being worshipped, as the principal focus because they want some sort of material reciprocation, which they actually get to some tiny degree. But it's far divorced from the spiritual reality. It's a great tragedy. And yet we are in the amazing situation of Western bodies, and we come in with the highest principle of religion. We have so much potency in Indian society. Prabhupada used to call us his white dancing elephants. But we really do. When I travel around, last year I was in Bangalore with a meeting there was one minister, the Minister of Finance and Law. He came and they were having a breakfast to, collect money. And this man who is in charge of the Rotary Club, he invited me to come. So I took along a whole stack of these papers that are talking about business in the mode of goodness. If you do your business in the mode of goodness, according to the scripture, you actually will make more money. The mode of goodness means that you're not ripping people off, you're giving them some sort of quality product, and you treat your workers properly, etc. And if you do your business in that way, eventually people will come to recognize that's a quality product, and you will get more business like that. So it's coming at a sort of an appeal to the influential businessman to become more in the mode of goodness. Then from the mode of goodness, we can take them into the mode of actually pure goodness. So I took along a whole lot of these, and all of these Indian businessmen and so on, they were so inspired by this idea of actually using the mode of goodness for their business ends. So like that, the devotee can go into all those kind of circles and have some influence. Don't think that we're just, trying to find a peaceful place for this life in my consciousness, etc. There's a whole world of service out there that Prabhupada in particular demonstrated by his energetic preaching all over the planet. He went everywhere. He was convinced that actually this whole planet can become Krishna conscious. He was convinced of that. Now we are trying to make ourselves Krishna conscious by Srila Gurudev's direction, but at the same time we should appreciate, what is Krishna's desire for the world? Krishna's desire for the world is to demonstrate his own compassion. We've discussed that. So now, when I'm starting to understand some of this knowledge, how can it be utilized in the world at large? Somehow or other we can influence people. If we have this sort of fund of knowledge, within us, it's very powerful, it's very potent, and we can use it for the welfare of humanity. Indeed, devotees sometimes compare the color of gold to that of bright golden stool. So gold is not an important thing. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has instructed devotees not to be allured by golden ornaments and beautifully decorated women. Nadanam najanam na sundarim. A devotee should not be allured by gold. So Prabhupada explains very beautifully here. Beautiful women or the prestige of having many followers. Mahaprabhu therefore confidentially prayed, Mama janama janmanishwari bhavatat bhaktiya ahoitiki twai. My Lord, please bless me with your devotional service. I do not want anything. A devotee may pray to be delivered from the material world. That is the only aspiration. Ainanda tanuja kinkaram, Prabhupada quotes. The humble devotee simply prays to the Lord, kindly pick me up from the material world, which is full of varieties of material opulences, and keep me under the shelter of your lotus feet. So now we're discussing some of those external material opulences. And as I've said, the purpose of my reading this is to show you what's inside the Bhagavatam. Because I know that lots of devotees don't read it, they don't pick it up. I don't know what they think is inside of it. But how would you deny yourself the...
Hardly anyone has it. The Srimad Bhagavatam collection. Not everybody has it.
But I also see many people have it on their shelves, but they've never even opened it. It's still in the plastic containers. That's why I keep making sure that Govinda Madhav brings his down and we rip them open every day. So he doesn't have that. Okay, so it goes on describing all these different...
Okay, my defense, I've only had it for 5 days, okay?
Okay. So it goes through here. And then there's a beautiful description of the descent of the river Ganga, and another beautiful description of the residents of Jambudvip offering prayers to Krishna. This is a very beautiful chapter. So we discussed yesterday in those 4, or rather in the 10 stages that are described in the Bhagavatam, that all the stages are about sambandha, building to the ashraya, which is the 10th stage, but it's also saying that when the prayers are offered, that is the same as the prayojan. Those prayers that are offered, that mood of offering prayers, worship to the Lord, that is bhakti. So now, I just want you to read just a very small little bit, because I love this particular chapter about the movements of the sun. So the sun is described.
Isn't it ironic that Japan is called the land of the rising sun after
Yeah, they have to give it some name. It is. It's where the sun rises, but they're out there, the other side of it. The sun's rising there, it's going around, then it's coming up behind them. But they actually don't see that. So it's describing how the sun planet itself is linked to this Mount Sumeru, and it's linked to another mountain. There are two mountains. Oh, the Manasotara mountain. Manasotara mountain. So these two mountains are there, and the sun is a wheel that's moving in between these mountains, and the sun itself is on an axle, and both sides of the axles are on these different mountains. And the sun itself, the way that it's radiating, it appears that it's going around the earth, but it's not quite like that. I can't begin to describe it. It's so complex. I don't understand it. What can I say? I'm not a scientist like that. Maybe Haladar will explain. I've given him one pictorial old Back to Godhead recently, which has pictures of this. Maybe this evening you want to bring, if anyone wants to look at it, and they can see. Yeah, it's all described there. So it's describing here that the chariot of the sun god, it travels at a speed of 27 million miles. 27 million miles in a muhurta. So it's not in an hour, it's in a muhurta. The chariot of the sun god has only one wheel, which is known as Samvatsara. The 12 months are calculated to be its 12 spokes. The 6 seasons are the sections of its rim, and the 3 Chaturmasya periods are the 3-sectioned hub. One side of the axle carrying the wheel rests on the summit of Mount Sumeru, and the other rests upon Manasotara mountain. Affixed to the outer end of the axle, the wheel continuously rotates on Manasotara mountain like the wheel of an oil pressing machine. So an oil pressing machine works like that, and the mountain is resting like that. So these descriptions are to give us, a totally different viewpoint. It may take many years to even accept them, but we should know that this information is here.
I have a movie of that also.
Do they?
I have it in my computer.
Oh, that Vedic cosmos.
It's explaining about the wheel of the sun and the
Wow.
lower planets, how they're constructed,
Beautiful.
and the universal destinations of each different
Right.
years.
So many reasons for understanding this, not just scientific information. The principal reason, as we said a couple of times, is to show our personal insignificance in this world. How small are we compared to all these other worlds? This is the power of the Bhagavatam. It's focused on appreciating the prayojan, which is appreciating that supreme divine personality and our savor to him. But if Is it?
They explained it that it doesn't go in a circle, it goes up and down the mountain, like up and down the hill.
Okay.
That's how it's explained in this Vedic cosmology book.
Yeah, I've seen it a few times, but I've never understood it. But I appreciate it. I appreciate that I don't understand it.
It's very scientific.
Yeah.
There's an amazing pattern in the purports of Fifth Canto. The Prabhupada says again and again and again, just believe, just have faith, just hear and accept, just hear and accept.
It's this achintya bhav.
And many devotees actually at that time have trouble with it and believe.
Because we think we're so damn important. We think, well, hell, I've been taught this for 20, 30 years, how can it be wrong?
I think Fifth Canto is a challenge for a lot of devotees because when we read it throughout a year, when we get to Fifth Canto, there's so many questions and doubts.
Yep.
And even Sadhuputa's movies and books, they have like 3 different explanations.
Yeah.
So you can pick one of those.
Yep.
So even he admits that it could be this, it could be that, it could be this.
Right.
But I think it's
But the thing is that we don't know what it is. If we accept that,
Fifth Canto, just accept from your spiritual master. So Fifth Canto is like a challenge, to
Right.
continue on.
It's like
accept
Yeah. I'm thinking of the discussion so often on the jiva's situation in this world. You can never actually fully have jiva tattva in your pocket because it's a continual deepening of understanding of our position. So like this in these topics, the more through the years and years and years and years we hear them, gradually, I'm sure today you understand this far more clearly than you did 10 years ago. I mean, your image and picture of it and so on. And in 10 years from now, if you choose to understand it more fully, will also be revealed more fully. So
I understand that I don't understand it, but still it's so cool and wonderful. I love it and I want it and I accept it.
Yeah.
Super focusing again and again in the purpose.
Yeah.
Just accept, just
Yeah.
believe, just
Yeah.
hear, just
Yeah.
don't doubt.
Yeah.
We can't understand it still. We have to accept so many things in spiritual life. There's so many things that we have to accept. We don't understand. But,
yeah,
because
big lesson what she's saying. Yeah. Yeah, I agree fully. I have the same thought.
It appears nowadays, because there are a lot of alternative scientists who are active and don't accept the kind of Christian-based paradigm, which is very limited and primitive, totally narrow-minded and fanatic, which don't, our outlook, our scientific, materialistic outlook is also more or less shaped and formed by that Christian basis upon which it's all resting. So once we abandon that limitation of that primitive paradigm and go into the higher Vedic paradigm, a whole number of dimensions open up, and there are lots of greater minds, relatively speaking, greater minds in the scientific world who have begun to understand that, especially in avant-garde science. So much phenomena is encountered that cannot be rationalized by our old concepts. And the Vedic paradigms, actually, if we're in knowledge of that and discover some of the very advanced information that is coming, then you can even begin to understand how great the Vedic paradigm actually is, because it correlates very much with these things. This is one of the things that Sadhguru has pointed out.
It's amazing how it works on so many
Actually
different
confirming
levels.
the Vedic concept, but it's so great.
But it's also amazing how it works on so many levels. Like there's the external explanation, etc. But then there's the dynamic of us accepting it, and that the dynamic of us becoming more humble, you can say, by this process. So it's not just about these facts, but it's actually a process. It's part of a process to give us access to the 10th canto. It's essential. Don't be shy of these truths. So let me just finish this because time's finished. Yeah.
Only Sri Maharaj in his subjective evolution of consciousness settles this whole issue by saying that the Srimad Bhagavatam was conceived by the ancient seers who saw everything as personal. They saw the spiritual reality. But when the spiritual entities enter the material plane, it goes through a period of shadow, and when it emerges into the material plane, it changes form. And so he was saying that the sun, for instance, or the issue of Rahu eating the moon, it's in our vision, in the material plane, it's totally impossible. But in the original spiritual reality, that's what was actually happening, because everything is basically personal.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I understand fully what you're saying. Totally, totally beautiful. Yeah. Very, very nice. Vrindavan.
Another thing, I think you might have been there, but in Fiji, one time Gurdev explained that, we can remember so many things, we can understand so many things. But this is a matter of the material qualifications we have, and actually Krishna says, I am the ability of man. And so he gives us so much, doesn't according to our karma. But The real thing is when Bhav descends. And when Bhav descends, which is realization, then everything is real. But until then, it's just a matter of some kind of material remembrance and qualification. But actually, not until Bhav comes can we really understand and realize anything, really, because the material is coming from the spiritual.
Beautiful. I'm really glad you mentioned that. Every single day I've mentioned the same thing. This is the very beginning of the class I've spoken to reach the place of Bhav. I think every day I've mentioned some of the symptoms of Bhav. So Vrindavan Vilasini is very nicely reminding us again that actually this heart, this Bhav, is to be inspired ultimately by reading it. And of course, part of that adhikar to access that Bhav comes from humility. Humility is the root of it all, like just pride is the root of conditioned life. So humility is the root of our spiritual progress. And who is the most humble is Sri Radha. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because actually we cannot attain Bhav. Bhav is given. So not until we can attract someone who has Bhav to give it to us, can we have Bhav. It's not like we can, you know what I mean?
Hang on, I've got to explain that clearly.
That's humility.
No, that you didn't quite explain it crystal clear. The Bhav is already Nitya Siddhyasya Bhavasya Prakritam, but Gurudev will give that Samvit Shakti in the Bhaktivedanta Thakur describes it very clearly in the sense of like transcendental knowledge. And then when we start to taste that transcendental knowledge, then that Hladini Shakti, so the combination of the Hladini and the Samvit will create this Shuddha Sattva. So this is coming from, it seems, Bhaktivedanta Thakur describes as if it has its origin in the mental faculty. It actually is already in the heart, but it's inspired by the mind to ignite again. So just on that one point, because you said that it comes from Gurudev and it doesn't come from Gurudev simultaneously. It's already there, but without Gurudev's, it's just like there is fire in all wood. Inherently, it's under the sun, it absorbs the sun's rays. Fire is in all wood, but it can never ignite until another piece of wood touches it that is already on fire. So this is the dynamic. So I just wanted to clarify that clearly. Yes. No. Totally. Vrindavan, you should have been here for the other one, because I've been saying just these same things that you're saying now. And I'm happy to hear you say this. These are the teachings of Gurudev that he's given to us very deeply. I've said many times that we're not jnanis. I said an example, like a jnani, he knows where all the signposts are. He'll keep saying, well, this is to there, this is to there. But the jnani himself never actually walks there. He doesn't actually go to the place that he's pointing to. He doesn't go to the place of Bhav. But he knows how to point to it all. He knows all the language and so on. And he can look like a great devotee because he can say all the terminologies, but in his own self, he's not actually walking there, so that's the difference.
And this is why that fifth canto is so good, because it's like she was saying, it's a test. It's from Guru. Will you surrender to me? Will you believe me? Because everything's based on Guru Nishta, Guru Bhakti, and complete, absolute
Beautiful
surrender
point.
to Sri Guru.
Beautiful point. Did you all hear that clearly? She's saying like this whole fifth canto is like a test of our Guru Nishta. Guru is presenting this to us and says, I support this fully. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What's that? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Mata Idam Tatradaro Naparaha. He is supporting the Srimad Bhagavatam Praman for the fact that the Brajaramanis are the greatest Upasan, the greatest worshippers of that Brajendranandan Sri Krishna. This is the verse that we have, so this Bhagavatam. So if we choose in our brilliant material, intelligence and estimation of ourselves to negate this and say, well, there's not a mango the size of an elephant. How can it drop onto a mountain and create a beautiful river? And then from that interaction of the jambu fruit, then gold can come and all this and so on. This is here, this is given to us. It's like a challenge, it's like a test. And if we just simply accepted these things with great wonderment, like a child. What does a child know? The child doesn't know anything. So we are also like children. We come to the school of the Bhagavatam. And Gurudev used to often say, come like a clean sheet. Don't come carrying some preconception that you actually know so many things, just like the example of the pianist, you know. He would charge, if you knew how to play the piano, he'd charge you $100 an hour. If you didn't know how to play the piano, he'd charge you $1 or $2 an hour. Because he'd have to undo all of that so-called expertise so he could teach you how to do it properly. So the spiritual master is like this also.
If we can accept Dr. exhibition on a lotus growing out of his navel.
Right. Heck, what is from there? Anything.
Because again and again, Prabhupada will say, in the purpose, we didn't go to the moon, and many fell away at this point. Yeah, we did. And even to this day, some still.
I know someone like this who doesn't believe this also, and he thinks he's a very great devotee, but he can't believe that we didn't go to the moon. Prabhupada is saying it in this commentary in the 5th canto. He says it directly.
Yeah.
So, you know.
I just did 5th canto with devotees in Vrindavan a few months ago, and there were some really nice devotees who just said, I just don't believe this. I believe everything else, but I can't believe this. And one devotee, really good standing devotee, said, well, nobody really believes this. And I'm like, what? Wait a minute, let's keep reading this.
But one point here, there's no need to make it like an issue. If someone has a real, particular stumbling block with this, let it go.
Yeah.
And keep feeding him prasadam, chanting Hare Krishna, and eventually perhaps that misconception will be purified. But sometimes the devotees, they can just blow people out. I know one devotee, and they just blew out a whole, they just got so aggressive about this one small point. It's not a big point that we never went to the moon. But if we explode it into something like do or die, then perhaps the person doesn't have the adhikar to go that stretch and might die.
It's only sadhusanga that
Huh?
It's only sadhusanga that can bring us,
Yes. Yes.
It's a matter of sukriti.
And sukriti.
Like taking prasadam, sadhusanga.
Yeah, so we've got to let the person have the, opportunity to build the sukriti and not chop him off too quick with our wisdom of knowing.
It's just like when we were distributing books, you didn't go up to someone and say, hey, you're a demon, you don't believe in this. And no, we said, oh, you're so nice.
Sometimes I used to.
Oh, well, we're
In the really early
supposed to do
days.
that. I just read in the purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita, we're not supposed to do that. We're not
Right.
supposed to do that.
No, never.
He said just be really nice to everybody, get him to take prasadam, get him to, take a book, even just touch the book.
Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati said, feed them meat and give them wine to drink if that's necessary. We should understand that. Yesterday we were talking about Prabhupada taking onions, in some life member's home and so on. What did Prabhupada show us by his own example? It's not this would indicate someone is like a jnani. They just want on the false ego platform to try and impress upon you how much knowledge I have. It's not about love. The whole Bhagavatam is only about love. If we lose that love track, we've lost. We've lost. If we lose that worship the divine Lord, Sri Krishna, then we've lost everything. We have to always, everything in existence can be reconciled with this remembrance of our purpose to develop our attraction to Sri Krishna. It's not to create aggressive situations where the decibels rise and you're loudly shouting and arguing with each other. How is that going to soften the heart of anybody, ever? That's not the way. In debate and so on, argument, rational. So these sort of questions come to mind when we pick up the 5th canto, because it's very challenging. As, the older ladies are saying, it's very challenging from when it was conceived. Gopinandini, she's saying, when it actually first came out, it's very challenging, for the devotees. Look, we finished the time, and I just want to talk about the sun god's horses. That's all I wanted to do from the very beginning of the whole thing today, because I love this part about the sun gods. He has 7 horses. Yeah, the sun. Huh? Yeah, I love it. I got it in all my notebooks. I love it. So listen, I'm just going to read this right through. It's about 4 or 5 translations, and you just can accept whatever. I love this part myself. As an oil pressing machine, this first axle is attached to the second axle which is 1/4 as long, and that's almost 4 million yojans, or 31 million miles. This is the size of the axle, 31 million miles of Suryadev's sun, the planet. The upper end of the second axle is attached to Dhruvaloka by a rope of wind. My dear king, the carriage of the sun god's chariot is estimated at 28 million miles, almost 29 million miles. I'm saying it's in yojans here, but they've translated in miles. Long and 1/4 as wide. That's 7 million miles wide. That's the size of the carriage that carries the sun planet. The chariot's horses, which are named Gayatri and other Vedic meters, are harnessed by Arundev in a yoke that is also 1 million miles. No, so it's 8 million miles. 8 million miles is the yoke of the chariot. And Arundev, he's actually a cripple. His legs are broken. And that's the driver of the sun chariot. Then it's got the name in the purport. Prabhupada gives us the name of the 7 horses. Gayatri, Brihati, Usniki, Jagati, Tristup, Anustup, Pankti. These are the names of the horses that pull the sun chariot. I believe it completely. I love it. Although Arundev sits in front of the sun god and is engaged in driving the chariot, controlling the horses, he looks back towards the sun god. There are 60,000 saintly persons named Valikalyas, each the size of a thumb, who are located in front of the sun god and offer him eloquent prayers of glorification. I love it. 60,000 small sages. Similarly, 14 other saints, Gandharvas, Apsaras, Nagas, Yakshas, Rakshasas, and demigods, who are divided into groups of 2, assume different names every month and continuously perform different ritualistic ceremonies to worship the Supreme Lord as the most powerful demigod Suryadev, who holds many names. So I said this beautiful verse the other day from the Brahma Samhita, and it gives the entire picture. Yak chakshu esa savitasa kalagrahanam raja samasta suramurtiya sheshateja yas yadyamatsamata sampritakala chakra govindam adi purusham tamahamajami. This is saying, with unlimited brilliance and power, the sun is the king of all planets, the resort of the gods, the personified eye of the universe. I bow down unto him, unto whose order the sun mounts his wheel of time and performs his perpetual orbit. That Sri Govinda do I worship. Why the devotees love the sun and these chapters so much? Because our beloved Srimati Radharani worships Suryadev every day. She's in the planet of those who are related to the sun. What does Banu mean? Banu means that one who worships the sun. Vrisha Banu is the one who's born in the sign of the Taurus. Vrisha Banu. And then his brother is called, Madhu Banu. Madhu Banu is it, and Ratna Banu are his 2 brothers. Then the grandfather's name is just Banu, and Vrishabhanu's sister is called Banumati. So it's all Banu, it's all the sun, it's all worshipping Suryadev. And here we have a description of Suryadev on the pages of the Bhagavatam. So it's all linked with Rasa Vichar as well as Tattva Vichar. Nothing separate. So, Shri Gurudev Ki Jai.
At the beginning you mentioned the planetary system, Maharaj.
Beg your pardon?
At the beginning you said something, Burmandala.
Burmandala is this earthly radius. Om Bur, Bhuva is the subtle world, Swa is the heavenly.
So all this you were describing was from the Burmandala or another planetary system? All this description.
Burmandala is the center of the shell.
Burmandala is the center of the shell.
The universe is in a shell?
The universe is in a shell. And that whole shell is called Burmandala, or the center of the shell. The center is called Burmandala. And then there is Bhuva is the next stage, and then Swaha is the next stage, these 3 stages. You have to read this. It explains it there.